We're sisters, best friends, and authors on a mission to help you stoke your creative fire and live the life of your dreams. We believe that purpose fuels passion and that creativity is your secret weapon for mass construction. There's never been a better time to bless the world with your dream realized. You're listening to The Kate and Abby Show. What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Kate and Abby Show. This is episode 41. Do you ever feel discouraged or even disgusted when you go back and read your own writing? Do you ever catch yourself saying, I don't know if this is any good? Do you struggle with comparison and feel like you'll never be able to write as good as so-and-so or insert your favorite author? If so, this episode is for you, so keep listening. In this episode, Kate and I will explain why you are never happy with your writing, and we're going to share some very practical ways to rediscover your love for your writing. Before we get started, we have to thank our sponsors, who are you. You guys are the ones who support this show and keep it going, and we appreciate your support so much. So if you get value out of this show, go to patreon.com/The Kate and Abby Show and help us keep this show alive and free of interruptions. Okay, let's get right into it. Why you're never happy with your writing. There's a few reasons, and probably not an exhaustive list that we're going to give here, but it's a good list. It's a good list of things that
I think we picked out the major ones that we've seen reoccurring quite a bit in the writing community.
Yeah, I agree. The first one that came to mind for me is, and these are in no particular order, but you're not happy with your writing because you're expecting too much. So you're setting the bar too high, and you have this expectation in your mind of exactly what your writing should be,
right,
or should sound like or read like, and it's not meeting that expectation for whatever reason, so you're unhappy with it.
It's kind of like when you imagine an event over and over and over again, something you're going to do, and you hype it up in your mind, and usually when it happens, it never meets this dreamlike expectation of what you wanted it to be, because it's just not going to be that fantastical standard.
Right.
And I think a lot of times we screw ourselves up when we create this standard for art. And art is something that's supposed to exist really outside of standards. We're supposed to come to it with creativity and imagination, and not this golden rule that we're trying to always line up with.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times that trips us up.
Yeah.
Looking at it completely different. Like there's a right and wrong way to do it, or there's this ideal that we need to live up to.
Right. And then there's like no freedom for creativity there.
Right.
You know, it's like we have this very specific definition of what good is. Yeah. And a lot of times that's kind of we're going to get into the comparison thing next, but a lot of times that expectation comes from what you've seen before, in which case it's like, why are you comparing what you're about to create, i.e. what has never been created before, with something that's been created before?
Right.
You know,
by someone else who isn't you.
Yeah, it doesn't work as a comparison.
Right.
It doesn't serve you at all to compare those things. And we're going to get into comparison in the next point. But I feel like a lot of writers, like you said, kind of relive or live this experience in their mind, or have this really idealistic expectation of what my writing should be. And then when it doesn't meet that expectation, and not saying that it's less than, it's just different.
Right.
So it might actually be better in another way. Have you ever had a writing day where like you're writing and you write like a sentence or a paragraph that in the moment you think to yourself that I don't like that at all, that's rubbish. And then you continue writing because you just don't want to get distracted on it. And then the next day or whatever, you come back to it and read it and you're like, oh, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, many times.
You have no problem with it.
Many times.
And sometimes you even like it.
Yeah.
The thing that you actually didn't like yesterday, you like today.
Absolutely. There's been times definitely when I just don't feel in the groove and I'm like, oh, this is probably all rubbish.
Yeah.
I just don't feel comfy. I don't feel in my zone. And then I'll go back and read it a day or so later. And I'm like, dang, that's good. I'm so glad I didn't like just throw up my hands and walk away from it because it's actually quite good. It's that in the moment you're too wrapped up in it to see, or you're thinking of someone else's writing or a process. A lot of times, I think a lot of people who write and do creative work get caught up in process. That's why all these like, motivational videos about like millionaire work routines and stuff are popular because people are trying to make their process, make their routine like someone else who is more successful than them, someone else who's reached this, plateau where the Greek gods hang out, and that's where you want to be. So you're trying to like make your process be someone else's, you know what I mean? And you can find videos like that, like, oh, J.K. Rowling's writing routine, so-and-so's writing routine, and it's like, well, guess what? You're not that author.
Right.
And you shouldn't try to be that author because every single person has different needs creatively, physically, spiritually. It's no different. So you need to look at what are my own creative needs? What are my own quirks and things I like and dislike? And what am I going to, what feels good for me? You can't muscle through that to try to make it be like someone else's just so you can reach this level of success with your writing, because that's not even success, really. You're stifling yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%. And as far as the expectations thing, something that's really helped me is to set the bar lower and to say to myself when I go into a writing day that I'm, feeling intimidated by, is just set the bar really low and be like, I don't even care how this turns out. Like, if you literally can have that mindset of, I don't care if this is rubbish, you, at least in my experience, I end up writing better. If I set the bar extremely low, I kind of surprise myself with, oh, wow, this is actually really good. Not that I ever expect myself to write like horribly.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's possible for an experienced writer to write terribly,
Right.
Just not up to your exacting standards for that day. But if you set the bar lower, then you'll end up surprising yourself in a good way.
Right.
Sort of like not expecting, sort of like in life, how if you don't expect things, you'll just be pleasantly surprised when good things happen.
Right.
And not be disappointed when the things that you expected don't happen. So it's sort of the same philosophy, I guess, with a writing day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as creatives, we can tend to expect too much of art and use it more as a mechanism that meets a certain need to create rather than just enjoying the thing itself, enjoying the process of creating itself, not treating it as like a means to an end.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like showing up for the joy of the craft, the joy of being able to write. Right. Not just, I didn't hit the amount of words I wanted to or whatever. And I think that's something we have to remind ourselves of from time to time.
Yeah, for sure.
Stay present.
Yeah, definitely. So we started to talk about you're comparing yourself to other writers. That's the next reason why you're probably not happy with your writing, is because you're comparing yourself to other writers, whether their process or their finished product. Neither one is something you should compare your own process and your own finished product to, because you are your own person, you're your own writer, you are unique in that way, and what you do will never look like exactly like what another person does. And that's just how it is. So it's ridiculous to compare yourself to another writer. Even me and Katie, with how close we are and how we've grown up with each other, and we write across the table from each other pretty much every day. And we have been doing that since we learned how to write.
Yeah.
And our processes are so different. And our books are also so different from each other. So it's like, we can't, even somebody who is, even two writers who are extremely close like we are,
Yeah.
it's impossible to compare. You know, I would
Exactly.
I never compare my writing to yours.
Yeah.
You never compare your writing to mine because we're both unique writers.
Yeah,
We
every
both-
single person is unique and different.
Right.
So that doesn't end with your writing style.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, like you're saying, it doesn't even have to be a published author. It can be a writing buddy. Maybe it's someone in your writing group who's like, you know, oh, I hit my 5,000 word a day goal. And you're there like, oh, I wrote 500 words. Well, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone's process is different. It's not
And their style.
right or wrong and good or bad. And their style. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think a lot of writers compare their style. Like, oh, I don't write as good as so-and-so. But it really, it's just a style difference.
Yeah.
And it's a preference, you know?
Right.
It's like saying this food is bad and this food is good. Well, that's actually just your taste. It's your personal preference. You can't tell me that a food I like is bad just because you don't like it, you know?
Exactly.
Or that this food is really good, I might hate it. So it's really a taste thing, you know? It's not oh, this person is better. That, to me, the person who is the better writer is the person who can make the reader feel the most and relate to the characters the most and remember the story the best.
Exactly.
You know, it has nothing to do with prose and style and stuff like that. That's just preference and taste.
Right. Exactly. It is a complete taste thing because what one person wants from a book won't be what somebody else wants from a book. That's why you have completely different genres, you have completely different styles, and there are people there. Your people are out there, regardless of what style you write in, regardless of what you think of your writing. Your people who want to read your writing are out there, and they're more accessible now than they've ever been in the age of the internet. So
100%.
be encouraged.
Yeah, for sure. The next one on the list is you're never happy with your writing because you're too close to it. That's something that I definitely have felt probably more than any of the others on the list. I'm also going to relate to the last one a lot too. But I think I relate the most to this one because oftentimes if I feel like something is just off with my writing or I don't like how it's turning out, most of the time it's because I'm overthinking it, obsessing over it, and I'm way too close to it. And I need to create some distance, whether that's time away from it or working on another project to gain perspective.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think you can definitely get way too wrapped up in a project and be too close to it to see clearly, especially when you get into the editing process with a book, because that's something I've noticed a lot with the project I'm working on. That after a while, it's like when you look at a word too long and it doesn't even look like a word anymore. It's like, what does that even say?
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
and it's like you're just too close to it. You've looked at it way too much. You need someone else to look at it, someone you trust, someone who wants the best for you and your project, but who will give you an honest opinion.
Yeah.
And have that person look at it and give you a little bit of feedback. Because most likely you are bored. Yeah. And that's okay. That means you've spent a lot of time and you've put a lot of hard work into your manuscript, and that's good. But you have spent too much time with it to be able to judge it accurately. You know, that's just the way it goes. So you need someone who's not as close to it, whether you're in the editing stage or if you're still writing. If you're like, oh, well, I'm halfway through the book and I'm just obsessing over this part, then ask a friend to read it.
Yeah.
Give you an honest opinion, because most likely things are not as bleak as they seem. Things will seem a lot more grave to the author than they are in reality.
Yeah. That's very, very true.
Because you're the one who wrote it. You spend like so much time with it that you can't see the good in it.
Right. Yeah. I think the boredom point is a very good point. In that, and like we were talking about in the last episode, or the one about grit rather, that boredom is a side effect of mastery. So if you're taking it seriously and you're working really hard on this thing, it's probably tedious at this point and you're probably kind of bored with it. So that's probably another reason why you are not a fan of it anymore.
Yeah, which is a good and bad thing. So, it's a dichotomy
Right.
that you just need to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. And the last one that I wrote down here is that you are taking it too seriously. You're not happy with it because you're taking it too seriously. And that's something that I know I fall into.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can relate to that.
I definitely fall into that trap of taking it too seriously sometimes and not finding the fun in it. And this kind of goes back to setting the bar lower, I think, is what if you could approach your work in progress with a attitude of, I'm just going to have fun with this. And I don't expect anything from it. I don't expect the outcome of what it's going to be. And I'm not going to take it so seriously. I'm going to have fun and just rediscover my love for writing. And we'll just see what happens.
Right.
Most of the time, it will turn out even better than it would have if you were really, putting your nose to the grindstone and trying really hard to make it good,
Exactly. Yeah, I think especially for some of the writers listening who have written when they were kids, will remember that when you're a kid and you start writing, it's just because you're having fun doing it. That's how kids are such a great example of how to be present and live in the moment, because they're not thinking about what other people will think of the writing. They're not thinking about whether it will sell. They're not thinking about whether their editor will like it or not. They're just thinking about the enjoyment of writing a story in this moment. And I think that gets lost in translation a lot of times as we grow and start to publish books, and our minds get clouded with the extra things that need to happen. But it's so important not to lose that foundation, because if you lose that foundation, you really lose your drive. Because if it becomes no longer fun, that takes the beauty of the craft away. That's why you started writing in the first place, because you enjoyed writing.
Right.
So a lot of times we, when we start to make it an unpleasant experience to write, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Yeah.
Because we will be publishing less books. So, we won't be furthering our writing career by making it an unpleasant experience for ourselves. So all the important business aspects, even those root back to having fun while you do it, or else you're not going to write as much. You're not going to engage in something that is an unpleasant experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to make it fun, because otherwise, going to brain science, which I know you love, when you repeatedly make writing an unpleasant experience, when you even think about going to write, the neurons in your brain fire and tell you that wasn't so great last time. We really weren't happy with ourselves last time we did that. Maybe we should do something else. Oh, look, Pinterest. So
yeah,
you have to make it fun, because that's what your brain is going to remember. That's what's going to become wired into your memory, is these feelings. What you make of the writing experience. So it has to be fun. You need to take the pressure that you're putting on yourself off, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Plus, if you're not happy, are you really successful?
Right. That's true. You have to, right. That's a great point. Think about okay, who are you as a successful author? Publishing books, and I'm happy somewhere, whatever, doing on a beach. Figure out what that ideal is. Okay, well, the only way to get there is to be that person now.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe you won't be on a beach, but you have to be as happy as you would be, because that's what's going to channel into your writing.
Yeah.
If there's this desperation to get to a point, it kind of just pushes it farther away.
Yeah.
You know what I
and
mean?
Writing's kind of funny because it's nothing really changes. Even when you become a successful author, you're still going to write books.
Right.
You're still going to sit there at your desk and turn your ideas into books and go through the whole process of doing that over and over again. So that kind of never changes in that way, I don't remember who said this quote or who is credited saying it, but I heard a quote somewhere that went, if you're not happy with what you have, you'll never be happy with what you get. And I thought that's really true, both in life and in a writing career.
Yeah.
So if you're not happy with writing now, with your writing, if you're never happy with your writing now, then you won't be happy with your writing in the future, even if you got all the best book deals ever and your books all got published and turned into movies or whatever your ideal is. Even if you had all those things and you still aren't happy with your writing, are you really successful?
Exactly. Right. So, yeah.
Getting a little philosophical here.
No, it's 100% true, though, and it carries over into everything we do. It doesn't end with our creative projects and careers. And like you said, okay, well, you being a successful author, you're still going to be sitting here writing a book. So you have to learn to be happy with that process, finding what works for you, finding the softness, finding the ease in the present moment. I think that's what I remind myself of so often on a daily basis when I'm writing is how can I make this an enjoyable experience for myself? How can I find the ease? How can I invite gentle, joyful energy into this moment? And maybe it has to do with how you set yourself up or where you're writing or how you're writing or the environment you're writing in. Bring joy into your space. And that's what makes it fun. That's what takes the serious edge and the little bit of like anxiety of perfectionism out of it, is making it a fun, joyful experience for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that you have to do that because it's normal to not like your writing or to not like what you make, even if you're having fun making it, even if it's something that's creative and something you're passionate about. Every single person who is a creative has been upset and annoyed at their writing, especially famous people and the masters have been upset at their own work. Me and Katie always talk about the letter that Michelangelo sent to, I think it may have been his cousin. I can't remember who it was, but I printed off a piece of it because I had to read it on this episode. How Michelangelo was unhappy with his painting when he was working on the vault of the Sistine Chapel. And that's something that everybody, praises to high heaven. They take pictures of it. They travel the world to see it. It's one of the most amazing, well talked about, well known works of art ever made. But when Michelangelo was painting it, he had a pretty hard time and didn't like it. And you can look up the whole letter. The whole letter is hilarious.
Abby was reading it. I was in stitches. I'm like, man, this guy was a writer, is what he was.
He was. The whole letter is hilarious, but I just took this one piece to read to you guys, which is the very end. How he ends the letter is, "My painting is dead. Defend it for me, Giovanni. Protect my honor. I am not in the right place. I am not a painter." That's one of my favorite Michelangelo quote. I am not a painter. Yeah. So if you ever said to yourself, I am not a writer, I cannot do this, then you are not alone. And pretty much all of the masters, all of the great artists of the world have been upset and annoyed by their work, whether that was writing or painting or anything. So you're in good company if you're a little bit annoyed. But apply all of the principles that we talked about today in this podcast and see how it goes. See if you can rediscover the joy and the love for your work and start to love your writing again, or start to love it for the first time if you've never loved it before, because it will make your process so much better. And I like to close with a quote now for each podcast to leave us on a good note. And I saw this one and I was like, this is perfect. This is a quote by Neil Gaiman. "The one thing that you have that nobody else has is you. Your voice, your mind, your story, your vision. So write and draw and build and play and dance and live as only you can." And I think that's a pretty good way to wrap up this episode. So, boom, that's it. If you enjoyed this episode of The Kate and Abby Show, share it with your friends and leave us a nice rating. We always appreciate that. Again, thank you to our patrons who make this show possible, who support us. Your support keeps us going. And if you get value out of this show, go to patreon.com/The Kate and Abby Show and help us keep it alive and free of interruptions. Also, be sure to check out the video version of this podcast if you haven't already. That is on Kate's YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/KAEmmons. And you can also find a ton of writing resources on my channel, which is youtube.com/AbbyEmmons. Until next time,
stay stoked
and rock on.